Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Dark Sarah, Attack of Orem, our January 27th, released independently. This album has 10 tracks, 45 minutes in length, and this is the band's fifth full-length studio album. They are a Finnish symphonic metal band. Now this is a concept record as you would expect, and this one picks up exactly where Grimm left off. So from a storytelling point of view, this album is seamless as the continuation of one into the next. This record also introduces a new villain, Orem, voiced by Mark Jensen of Epica. So there's a lot of new elements in the sound, in the characters, in the concept, and in its design. And I want to start off with the design. I felt like the design of this record was better created and better achieved than its predecessor. It's an album that still feels very cinematic because of the concept that it has and how it introduces that new character right at the beginning of the album, and then it allows it for it to develop. It allows for a roller coaster ride to ensue. So it's a very cinematic record from that point of view as far as how you follow the concept with the ebbs and flows necessary in order to keep the listener engaged. But at the same time, it's a very cohesive album, it's a very balanced album that it doesn't feel like it breaks itself apart. The songs go far. The songs feel like they push themselves to their limit. They are different from one another, but they always have the same starting point and they always come back to that same beaten path. This is really important in order for that diversity not to allow the record to lose its sense of continuity and not to lose the overall big picture that it needs to have in a concept like this. As far as sound is concerned, I would say that this album is a lot more electronic than it is symphonic. It's a matter of semantics, I guess, but it just feels a lot more electronically driven. It has a lot of electronic pop elements. It has some dark elements in it, and when the guitars keep going, you almost feel like you're listening to a symphonic power metal album. So there's a lot of diversity of sound and execution, and this is why I said earlier some of the songs push themselves to their limit. Some songs go a little bit further than what I was expecting them to go. I like the electronic side of this album and how predominant it is. It allows you to feel like there is a nice flow, a nice red line that connects each and every single song and allows them to have a little bit more diversity on the edges. It's also a sound that's really well conceived and really well put together. It allows the vocals to shine and allows the other elements to come in and merge themselves with that electronic sound without the electronic side losing anything and without those elements necessarily being overshadowed. When you look at the guitars, for example, they bring heaviness at times, and that heaviness is really important in an album that is very light. That electronic sound adds to the pop feel that the record has, almost dance at times, and you need something to ground the album. You need something that adds some weight to the record. More often than not, that weight comes from drums, but predominantly from the guitars. Those two elements create heaviness, and when they create heaviness, the album feels a little bit more balanced. It feels more explosive. And some of those songs with those electronic elements and the heaviness and the momentum that the guitars have, you almost have the impression that you're listening to, like I said earlier, a symphonic power metal album. Those songs break the routine. Those songs give a little bit more metal to an album that at times is very diffused of it. But an album that still has a lot of energy, that has a lot of layers. The sound is really well managed as far as the production is concerned. This album really allows you to experience all of its beauty, all of its elements. And because of the simplicity of it at times, it's not an album that overcomplicates things. It tells you exactly what you're going to get as the songs start. Some tracks providing more of that pop electronic sound, some songs having a little bit more heaviness. Alternating between the two allows you to better digest the movement and allows you to better digest each and every single song, but it also allows you to better digest the lyrical content, the story, and the concept of this record. That is an important aspect so that the listener can appreciate all the different layers that comes into making an album like this. Now, vocally, I already talked about Mark Jensen. He is the new evil, the new villain, if you will, but the new evil character that the story puts through. And his vocals, his heavy vocals, his harsh vocals, add darkness to the overall aura that character brings into the forefront. Because all around that, you have Heidi's vocals that are extremely light, but matching perfectly with the sound that they created, and she becomes almost this perfect narrator that just guides you, holds your hand and guides you through the experience of going through this entire record from the first all the way to the last song. I think this is her best vocal performance since joining Dark Sarah. She just felt more natural. She felt more relaxed, almost like there was no pressure on. Let me just do what I know how to do, and let's see where the chips fall. So this album has a more looser, a more warm, a more caring almost performance by her, which adds a lot of emotion to the way the listener will perceive the songs, the lyrical content of those songs, and how the story unfolds. Really important, once again, for a concept album like this. So when I look at all of these different pieces, I would say that this is a huge step up from the previous record, Grim. It feels, like I said, a more natural album. It feels like it's a more organic album, an album that came to them a little bit more naturally, not necessarily forced. And when you have an album that has perhaps that backdrop behind it, everything sounds better, everything feels better. The sound on this album is more natural to the strengths of the band and the strengths of Heidi as a vocalist, and therefore you get a lot more from her than you would otherwise. So it's a very strong album across all its denominators. Having Mark Jansen from Epica on a track gives a little bit of an Epica vibe to that song. It's an interesting twist in the overall development of this concept and in the story that they put forward with this record. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I have to start with Attack of Orem, the song featuring Mark Jansen on vocals. This is a very Epica-like song. When you look at the sound, when you look at the vocal dynamics between him and Heidi, it really feels like an Epica track, perhaps an Epica track that has more of electronic backdrop. His voice is really important, not just to give life to the character, but to create that dark, villainesque atmosphere surrounding this new character in the story. So I really like the inclusion of his voice. I really like what he brought with it, because he doesn't just bring heaviness, he also has a little bit of a dark tone to how he delivers his lines. And that's really important, once again, in order to set the character. Musically, this track has a lot of bass. The bass really pops. It has heavy riffs, it has heavy drums, but you still feel like there is a blend of those electronic elements, intertwining themselves between that heaviness, so that you have moments that perhaps feel a little bit more contained, and then you have moments that are a little bit more bombastic, that have a little bit more explosion, that sound a little bit heavier, with more volume, with more substance. It's an epic song all around when you look at the song musically and when you look at the song vocally. Next you have Burn. Not as consistently heavy as a track as Attack of Orem, because Orem is a song that has heavy elements vocally and heavy elements musically. This song has some heavy moments musically, but it's a song that's made of pieces, almost like pieces of a puzzle. It starts off with some heaviness from the drums and guitars. That heaviness then translates into a more electronic pop sound that kind of dominates the way the verses come together. Then you have a choir, almost bridge, that connects the verses with the chorus, a pre-chorus if you will. That's really interesting. Sound-wise, there's a sense of continuity, but vocally it really breaks itself apart. And then you have a chorus that's just larger than life, that really pops. And then they just repeat that formula. It seems like a formula that could become a little bit redundant, but it doesn't, because the dynamic of how different all of these different pieces are and how well they intertwine them together to create this, this incredible tapestry of a song is what gives life to this track, is what gives dynamic movement to this song, because you feel the heaviness of the song, you feel the symphonic side of the song, and you also feel the electronic side of the song. Last but not least, Breaking Free. The verses are super electronic on this track and allows the vocals to pop. Heidi has a great vocal tone, she has a great vocal delivery, and she's one of those singers that could sing anything. And on this song, because of the backdrop being so electronic, being so pop driven, she pushes her voice more into that arena, becoming a little bit lighter, intertwining a lot better with the sound behind it, and becomes a song that's textured but easy to digest and easy to understand, because it still feels very simple to the naked eye. And it also gives the song a sense of growth. It's a track that doesn't stay still, that really moves. It has moments of light. It has moments perhaps where that light is not as bright, because there are some heaviness throughout the track, or there are some sparks of heaviness throughout the track. But overall, when you look at it, it's a very balanced song that allows the vocals to be in the forefront more often than not. The vocals really guide the experience, and everything else is there in order to create the perfect backdrop for it. This is it, Dark Sarah with Attack of Orem, out January 27th. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.